I had something only peripherally like that one time. I had to build this. I think I'm talking about. I had to build a bigger domain than Tripoli and Brad Hogg had done for their LC102. Where just the way to do it is just channel. Let's just stitch them together. Every time it's just stitched, there would be a gap in the grid. But it's just showing me it's impossible to do that for until I finally stumbled upon the answer. I never did it with conscious, oh, this will solve it, just somehow work. We can do it with the answer.
So it wasn't just simply adding that point to the...
That's how I tried it over and over and over. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. It sounds like you lose track of it. That would be fun. It's very frustrating. I understand.
We can at least pull up the
very frustrating.
the recent presentation.
That's not that. It's not having a stock file.
Stream is up.
Okay. Okay, we can get started. This is the last Weather Watch of the semester and academic year. Before we begin with this, could we pull up the poll I had up here, please? Interesting scientific debate this morning on chocolate chips in breakfast foods, yes or no? So this could include chocolate chip muffins, pancakes, bagels, elsewhere. I had this poll set up, but it's not loading, so we're just going to do show of hands. We just need to clear the debate. So if you think chocolate chips should be in breakfast foods, you are agreeing with this, raise your hand for yes.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Does it mean
Don't
that
turn
they're
around.
tolerable? Does it mean that they're tolerable, but you don't demand them?
Correct.
Okay.
You accept it, you would eat it. you
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Okay.
So show of hands,
You don't
yes.
think they should be banned?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, how many Michael, turn around.
I'm not looking. Oh, you guys.
Okay, chocolate chips in breakfast foods, no.
Wow. There's three.
Wow, you
I
have,
see
you
three.
have companies, Laura.
Thank you,
And
Flora.
Helen.
The worst is when you think it's chocolate chips, but it's raisins.
Oh, that's true.
That's
A whole other nightmare
Or you
category.
think it's blueberries and it's chocolate chips.
See, that's an upgrade.
I think we're.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, now that we know this. Now I know the audience.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Know the judge. Yep.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for participating.
No, resolving.
Resolving
Yeah.
the issue. Yeah,
Nothing's
yeah.
resolved.
With the correct response. We can go through the week-long loop. I was going to have Pete make a 45-minute loop of every single weather event the whole academic year and go through it minute by minute, but I didn't think we'd have time for that. So we'll just stick with this here. But going back during the year, if you have lived, oh wait, actually, could we exit out of this? I'm so sorry. I have another website I want to show. Because we can do a list of all the weather events, notable weather events we've had throughout the year pretty quickly. If we search Iowa State Mesonet, please, I'll show you how to get here. This is a website you could waste a lot of time on, and I recommend you doing so. This first. So this is the Iowa State Mesonet page. You go to National Weather Service data and search for warnings. And if we go to this is number 1, if we go to number 2 down here, you can look at by county, zone, or point every single watch, warning, or advisory for a location for a specified year, and it pulls it up pretty quickly. So we're going to do this. If we, in the start date, if we type September 9th, September 4th, so 09/04/2024. And okay, the end date's good. And then if we scroll down to the map here, let's say you have no idea the Latin log of Madison, you can drag this little point to roughly Madison. And then if we go to you can buffer the radius if you want to do that. We'll just go 10 miles. We'll say everything within 10 miles of this point, we're going to capture. And look, we have here. If we go to entries per page and 50, and we can just scroll through these. These are all the watch, warning, advisories we have lived through this academic year.
That's very cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. And let's say you're going, okay, pick one of these. Let's go to this severe thunderstorm warning, September 22nd. Let's say I have no idea what that was. Let's click on it. Here is a radar composite of the warning. Madison's roughly here, so September 22nd, we were technically in a severe thunderstorm warning So going through, if we go back just a click, or a tab actually, I think it opens a new tab here. So if we count these up, we have been under, we could click the phenomena and just list them alphabetically. We have been under 6 cold weather advisories. You can see them listed here from December to February. We've been in a lot of dense fog advisories from December all the way to February. 1 extreme cold warning. I think this was the day it was like minus 13 was our low or something.
Oh, yeah,
First day of
inauguration
class.
day.
Yeah, first day of
It
class.
was inside, yeah.
We had a flood advisory for the same day that we were under that severe thunderstorm warning. Freeze warning and watch, these corresponded together. A whole slew of severe thunderstorm warnings here and watches. We had 14 severe thunderstorm warnings throughout the year, 2 watches, 1 there and 1 there. 2 tornado warnings. These ones didn't actually impact Madison. If we click on them, they were right in a row, but just in April, you'll see it was for this cell. Madison's right here again. Oh wait,
Madison's right
no,
here.
Madison's right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was 1 for this cell and then 1 for that cell, so we got missed, but we were technically under tornado warning. If we go back and click, there's just 2 more. Whole lot of wind advisories you'll see, and then winter weather advisories. 7 wind advisories, 7 winter weather advisories. So that's the recap for this year. All the watches, warnings, anything like that. And again, all you have to do is search Iowa State Mesonet, and at the very top it's National Weather Service data, anything like that. We can go all the way back too. If we, let's reload this page, I think it'll be easier.
As that's getting reloaded, just
Yeah.
one quick thing. First of all, thanks for showing this. I didn't realize this
I know,
existed.
this is excellent.
But it's also notable that, I mean, given the snowfall that we've had this year, it's been low, that we had no winter storm warnings.
True,
At all.
that's
It was
true.
just-
Yep, only watches, yeah,
Or, yeah.
and advisories, a lot of advisories.
Consistent with the
Yeah.
utter boredom of the last winter.
Yeah, we got like 20 inches of snow or something.
Yeah, all the K through 12 students will tell you that they have no snow days, they only
Oh,
have cold
yeah.
days.
Yep,
Season.
yep.
That's no fun.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
You can pick any date range. I think if we scroll down to the map here to the, okay, we're still on Madison. So you see, if you want to, you can look through all 2,176 of these that Madison has ever been under, if you want to. And you can also, if you scroll up, this is what I did, you can export these to Excel or CSV if you wanted to count them up or do a lead time forecast. So
Very awesome.
feel free to have fun with this, especially if it's taken down eventually. I don't know. If the data becomes, under a paywall or something, but just have fun with this. Okay, can we go to the loop, the week-long loop?
Thank you, Patrick. That's very cool.
Of course. So you'll see, I'll let this loop a couple times. It's been stormy. If you look, recent memory, we've had clouds, we've had rain. There's been a lot of storms, particularly in the central part of the United States. Oklahoma had their rainiest April ever. They had their rainiest November ever last November, so they've had a lot of rain in that part of the world. You'll see pretty much every state, as this loops again, has been impacted by some form of precipitation. The only state that really has been missed is Florida. So everywhere you'll see storms. Here's a big storm system, our trough. That was maybe our severe weather. We didn't get severe weather from that. Storms over southern plains. We have some troughs over the west. Florida is kind of just hanging out under impact of a subtropical high. They didn't really get any rain. They're actually in a drought in Florida right now. So other things to point out, you can see the Gulf Stream. I'll wait till these clouds move. This line, this curvy line is the Gulf Stream. So you can see where there's warmer waters and colder waters and the difference between the two. If we stop this at the beginning, because it's the ocean, so it evolves slowly. If we go to the very beginning, you'll see here's the Gulf Stream. There's this long pendulum eddy type thing. If we click like right there or something, you'll see it changes.
Oh, yeah.
So it becomes more meridional. This eddy grows and evolves. So you can't really see it in the loop, but if you compare 2 times, you can see it changes. So that's the Gulf Stream. If we let this play again, just from this, there's been really big hail and a couple tornadoes in the south in Oklahoma and Texas, and just continuous. You can see there's a flow of moisture and then drier air, some of it coming over the Mexican plateau, and these meet up and you get daytime heating, you get thunderstorms all the time in this part of the season. The cold air is mostly in Canada, central and northern Canada now. We'll see on the current satellite that a lot of Canada now, southern Canada specifically, is snow-free, which is important for our weather. And we've only had one big trough, which was this trough here, fired off some severe weather. We were under an enhanced outlook for severe weather. We were under a special weather statement at like 5 a.m. the day later. So question is, why did that not happen? Why didn't we get that severe weather? One of the reasons is we stopped sampling the weather in this part of the world. And so it's hard to predict the weather when you don't sample it, number one. Number two, there was just like a lid on top of the atmosphere that some storms fired off, but the main severe weather focus, Iowa into our La Crosse, Madison, that lid just didn't break. And so we didn't get the big storms like that was expected early on in the week. And let's see, anything else? You can also see, if we stop this at the very beginning, one thing I was looking at, oh, that's perfect.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. If you look in here, this is Manitoba, Canada. You can see Lake Winnipeg is completely frozen over. Lake Winnipeg has a little brother named Lake Winnipegosis, which Lake Winnipeg means big muddy water. Lake Winnipegosis means little muddy water. And so if we play this, you'll see these two things don't move. It's because they're just frozen lakes. So there they are again. Very prominent feature. There's also one north of Lake Michigan that you can point out too. So it's still ice covered, even though there's no snow on the ground. I think that's...
Yeah, one last thing is in the
yeah.
eastern part of the map, just an interesting cutoff forming in the central
Yes.
Atlantic. You see some
Yeah, that is
deeper
interesting.
convection forming near the center of it. That's interesting. I mean,
It hasn't really-
cutoffs are forming,
Yeah.
this time of year. Something to watch later in the season might be interesting.
Absolutely. It's going the opposite way, which is good for us, any weather, any tropical. See it just move, yeah. Could we pull up the current satellite, please? And I'll do North America. So the zoomed out look. So here's the current look. It was stormy. We saw that in the week-long IR loop, and it's still pretty stormy, especially east of the Rockies. Here's the Rockies. You can see they're snow-covered. East of that, there's a lot of clouds. There's northerly flow over the central plains down into, you can see a boundary making its way through the southern states into Texas, and that's meeting up with Gulf air, and so there's storms firing down there. As expected, we're kind of in this just mess of clouds. We'll see there's a short wave over us right now, maybe even a cyclone over Iowa and Nebraska. You can kind of see the winds and the clouds move cyclonically there. A lot of just pop-up convection. Early in the loop, we don't have a lot of daytime heating. Towards the end, you can see just clouds pop up, so that's the land heating up, all the moisture being evaporated into the atmosphere. You can see that, and it looks like gray speckled compared to the white, bright features here. Some thunderstorms in Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, you can see they're bright white, and then there's even outflow from these thunderstorms. So that's air making up to the stratosphere and spreading out. You can see that mainly in this region here. What I pointed out last week, this was all snow covered. Right now, the snow cover has retreated, almost all the way to the north to Hudson Bay here. So that is a good sign if we want to be warm. A lot of our weather systems come from Canada, and so if there's not cold air, we are not going to be as cold.
How about eastern Ontario and Quebec? Do you know about the snow cover there?
It's still snow covered there, I believe, because a lot of these systems have moved sort of north-south through Hudson Bay, produce snowfall, especially in Quebec there, yeah. And you can kind of see here's snow cover in central Quebec there, so there is snow cover there, I know.
I think just this morning from like Lake Superior eastward, it's snowing, I think.
Yeah, that would make sense, yeah. I think so. There was even, with our severe weather, I believe there were ice storm warnings up in just south of Hudson Bay. So still winter up there. Luckily for us, it's not. What else? Oh, and then one other thing we'll see, there's a gigantic ridge over the western United States. You can see it stretches essentially off this map up towards Alaska. On the downstream side, you can see the clouds flowing straight north from Canada. So that's a big ridge. Hopefully that'll make its way and keep us warm for more than 2 days, which is what has been happening, it seems. And then one other thing I'll point out, now that I see it, if you look at Arizona, specifically New Mexico, this is the Coconino Mountains. And so what happens is the sun comes up, it hits the mountains first because they're taller. So they get more solar insolation, more heating, and you get cloud development along the mountain ranges first. So you're seeing that. They also have more moisture generally because Arizona's a desert, but the mountains get precipitation comparatively. So you're seeing the mountain ranges outlined by clouds here. So that's something interesting as well. And a big cyclone south of Greenland here. Pretty cool. Okay, could we go to 250, please? So we'll look at the jet stream. We saw it was there's a lot of weather systems. We've had a lot of weather systems. This is why. We have a very wavy jet. And so this is your more polar type jet. First of all, it's shifted northward. We can prove that it's the polar jet, but I'll just tell you that for now. And this is the subtropical jet. We are sort of in the middle. Here's spring in the middle between the two. North of the polar jet, typically winter-like conditions. So we're in a shot of cold air. It's pretty chilly this morning. We're going to be in the 50s, so that makes sense. We have a dip in the jet stream and we're under the cold air. And then summer is really confined south of the United States. Even Texas is only in the 80s today, so pretty chilly for Texas, I would say. We need some big system or just wait until the polar jet finally retreats. This subtropical jet moves northward, and then we're finally in the summer pattern. But one of the main reasons it's been so stormy is we have this really wavy jet. Here's a gigantic trough, strong ridge, another trough, another slight ridge. So this has been the pattern this past week, why we've had all the weather systems. Can we go to 500
Looks
now?
like Chris Thorncroft's LC1 setup, doesn't it? You know, the strong barotropic shear on the waves to the north.
Yeah, other interesting thing is, look at the object in Arizona. You can see that obviously, there's a shear line
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But then once you get into New Mexico, it
Yeah.
just reverses immediately.
Yeah, interesting.
That's
Yeah, I don't know about that. These might be more believable towards California, but this, and they're still pretty significant wind speeds, I would say. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's the Area 51.
That's true. Yeah.
What does it look like at slightly lower?
I forgot
Like,
you're
do you
here.
still see that at
What's your
300?
Oh yeah. Can we see 300, please? Good point. We can see if this is erroneous or not.
Yeah.
No, that's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
there you go.
It'd still be erroneous.
It could be. Yeah.
I think it's part of that trough, like.
Yeah,
it's more
that's
cut off.
the axis of dilatation right there.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Maybe that's exactly the trough axis.
Sliver.
Yeah,
So you'll
it's
see
a thin line.
the-
It's a line.
We went lower in the atmosphere. The subtropical jet weakened, so that's subtropical. The polar jet in places, not everywhere, strengthened, especially Canada, Alaska. So you would expect the polar jet to be lower in the atmosphere than the subtropical jet. So this is a verification that this is more polar, this is more subtropical here. Can we go to 500 now? So we'll see troughs and ridges, and you'll see, as expected, a lot of waves as well. First, there was this small short wave that moved through. It's not really discernible anymore, but there was a short wave that moved through yesterday. Rained, it was sort of misty the whole day. There was a cyclone at the surface, but for the most part, we were just under weak ascent. We are still under weak ascent. Here's another short wave. We are downstream of that. Maybe there's some ridge trying to form, but just general weak ascent. We're going to get rain later, so that makes sense. Where we saw no clouds under that gigantic ridge, probably warm, probably a really nice day over the west. And the wavy pattern is still reflected at 500 as well. The climatological Hudson Low has shifted northward too, so maybe that's a sign that we're getting more in this spring-summer pattern. as opposed to winter as well. And that storm south of Greenland, nice deep trough, probably pretty stacked as well. And could we go to the surface map, please? And that'll be the last thing I show here. So first we'll focus on Madison area. So what you can see, tale of two seasons essentially. There's 50s and 40s in Wisconsin here, even some light rain to the north. If you just go below the cloud shield, you're in 60s and 70s. So a nice day in central Illinois and Indiana, but you just go slightly northward and suddenly it's more fall, spring type weather. Really nice day over the eastern United States. We could see that pop-up cumulus, pop-up convection. You can see some locations reporting some lighter cloud cover as opposed to the overcast and maybe some rainy conditions. There's a band of rain where we can look at the radar too, moving towards us, move to Omaha and Lincoln into Iowa as well. If we scroll down to Texas, we saw there was a band of clouds moving north to south. You can kind of see that. So there's northerly flow at the surface. It runs into southerly flow off the Gulf. And so that was that boundary we were seeing. Starting to fire off some storms here. 2 locations reporting storms. I believe this is just thunder or lightning in the vicinity, not a thunderstorm. This is a thunderstorm. That's a thunderstorm off. So 88 over 70 at Brownsville, Texas. Absolutely terrible. I would take 40s and 50s over this personally, because this is just terrible.
That's where my parents are right now.
Yeah,
I already got messages about it.
So, and a nice day over Florida. We saw it was dry. It's going to continue to be dry. So that's something to watch too, is the drought,
Yeah,
the relative drought over Florida.
And they're also, I mean, I guess expect to get into the upper 90s.
Yeah, that's right.
Parts of the
Yeah.
western peninsula.
That's right, yeah. Other than that, if we look at the west, just to complete this here, these. So it's a really nice day. We saw no clouds, no surface obs reporting any cloud cover. All this circles are just completely clear conditions. The only places with clouds are stratocumulus, probably making its way, was on shore, now it's making its way offshore, right along the coast. Other than that, places in like Canada, you can see 70 over 34, that's a beautiful day. Over Banff, I believe, is somewhere up here, so nice day if you're in Canada. Relatively not true
Western
all the
Canada.
time, but yeah, Western Canada for sure. And then, yeah, if we go to Eastern Canada, we were looking at the cloud cover and everything, there's even some snow being reported.
That's a nice day for me in southeast Ontario.
63, yeah, good. So this is the only place right now near us that has winter still.
Yeah, seems.
Just Eastern
Temperatures on
Canada.
the coast, 18 degrees.
And then could we go to the radar?
Real quick, I had
Oh,
an
yeah.
interesting question come in through the generic AOS at aos.was.edu email
Mhm.
this week about the surface obs. He questioned what these little tiny gray numbers were underneath, like a 7, 9, 5. Anybody know what those are?
Visibility?
Nope, visibility is the black number, like 10, 10.
Oh, yeah, that's right, that's right.
The little number 5, 5.
Is that pressure tendency?
Nope.
Oh.
I had to do some digging. It's actually a ceiling marker, and it has to do with the synoptic code. So like a 0 is like 0 to 50 meters for a ceiling with like the lowest cloud layer. A 9 I think is 2,500 meters, and then there's other ranges in between there. So that's what that number is. It has to do with how high or low the ceiling is
Interesting.
based on the
Okay.
synoptic code.
So
Which is
Pete, when I said visibility, I meant visibility straight up.
Yeah, of course.
yeah, you and anyway,
That's interesting, yeah.
I was gonna.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be honest, I never
I
noticed
didn't,
those were there.
I didn't know what it
Yeah.
was. I had to go look it up, and then he keeps back, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know how my question got forwarded to the computer guy, but thanks for spending all the time on it."
Yeah, that's really fun. What you'll see here, here's our maybe rain moving towards us. You can see, again, this is also cyclonically rotating, so there is a small pressure perturbation there. Some maybe lake effect precipitation, but other is just really light stratus precipitation. You can see pop-up convection in the warm 70s and 80s in Ohio and into Pennsylvania, and then more widespread rain, again, for Oklahoma. Here's that boundary moving through. I'll point it out again. You can kind of see on the leading edge, there's regeneration of the thunderstorms and precipitation, and then it's running into that Gulf air, so probably likely heavy flooding gonna go on, if not already going on in Texas, as these two things combined here. So something to watch as well on the West Coast, where we saw that development along the Coconitos. There you go, there's some, the radar's picking up on the clouds, at least maybe some precipitation as well. Anything else anybody wants to see? All right, I'll hand it off.
Wait a minute. A number of you are here for the last time in your careers, probably. And we thank you for your constant support and attendance. But we can't let this go by without saying to Patrick, a huge thank you for at least the last 3 years of being up front every Friday, showing things that nobody else would have uncovered on a routine basis. It's not only occasionally, it's routine. Patrick, I've been bragging about you all over the place with letters because of this ability of yours, which is only one of your talents, but I'll tell you, it showcases all of them. And you've done a spectacular job for a number of years here, and I just can't say thank you enough. We're gonna miss you.
If anyone wants to do this, I have gained a lot of practice for free presenting weather in front of people who are knowledgeable, which is what I want to do for a job, so I would highly recommend it. Even if it's bad, it's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
And we're a friendly crowd.
Yeah, I
We
think
won't
so.
come down to our
Only a couple heckles in the back, so. Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. It's always standing up here since I've been back. It's been a challenge because after seeing the wonderful presentations that Patrick leads, tough act to follow. So, thank you for that. Let's first go to Pivotal and look at the forecast, Pivotal forecast page. That, and first take a look at launches and warnings and hazards. So the big thing that's showing up here are just severe thunderstorm watches that are in place. Some of this is along that region that we saw, the front advancing toward. Some of these are actually active warnings right now. We saw in the radar summary, or the radar animation, that there were some convection beginning to develop over parts of North Georgia. So I guess those are already rapidly becoming severe. And they have some flood warnings that are actually active as well over parts of Oklahoma. There's a professor at University of Oklahoma, was it Howie Bluestein that reported that? He had like 30 inches of rain over the last month or so.
Yes.
Those are pictures
from
of
his backyard with
Yeah.
flooding in it.
backyard, yeah. So it's been really wet in this part of the country. I guess the only other one is a wind advisory out in southern California.
Winter weather advisory.
Yeah, that very thin strip right here.
Oh, Donovan.
Yeah.
It's actually south of there.
Yeah. That's closer to the Reno area,
Yeah,
Sparks
yeah.
in that area. Okay, so fairly quiet on this. Let's look at the 6 to 10 day outlook on this, and then the 8 to whatever's beyond that. Here from CPC, this looks very much like what we saw last week. We're in that period with above normal temperatures expected across the northern part of the United States, the west and the southeast. And then during this period, likelihood of below normal temperatures. How much below normal is unclear, but very strong likelihood over parts of Texas and Arizona, and Texas and New Mexico later in the next 6 to 10 days. If we go to the 8 to 14, good period, persistent pattern, and this we'll see in the short term, at least, evolution of the forecast, that we're going to get a blocking pattern covering much of North America with a cutoff low that's going to form just to our south, and that's going to actually have an impact on our weather for the next several days, keeping us, that promise of warmth and sun with a bridge to our west may not be fully realized, in part because of this cutoff that's going to form. That's only in the short term period, but that drifts sort of southward, and we're left with warmer temperatures finally arriving here. As for precipitation, below normal conditions expected across the northern part of the United States, very good chance of below normal over the northern plains and the upper Midwest, and a rather wet pattern across the southeast, which I think broadly that's probably a good thing for them. And we go to 8 to 14 days. kind of very similar pattern, although the, those dry conditions, or at least the likelihood of being dry, begins to weaken, lessen a little bit. Could we, Pete, please go to the state climatologist office just to see, I don't know if it's been updated through yesterday.
You want our climate data?
Yeah, climate data.
Sorry, Ed updated this morning, so.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so those above normal temperatures that we've seen most of the last several days, last week, most of the season, continues onward for accumulated precipitation. We scroll down just a bit. Okay, we've been tracking close to normal. We finally went just a little bit above in our last rain event. I think just about an inch to an inch and a half broadly over parts of Dane County yesterday. And I guess we don't really have to look at this anymore. The next one, the snow.
It's over.
Yeah, right.
It's a
So
non-event.
inconsistent with the fact that we had no winter storm warnings.
God, look at that.
And I would love to see more of those, John. You know that.
I know, bring it on, is
Bring
what
it
you
on,
say.
bring on the snow. So that's it. I don't think we'll see any snow between now and the end of the semester. Well, next semester. So I think
We'll
we're
have
good
less
with
than
that.
a foot before the end of the semester.
Okay. So what I want to do is now go to Pivotal and go to a different set of maps than we look at traditionally or typically. So let's go to the models. But before we do that, you'll go to models, please, and then GFS. And then I'm going to look at just temperatures and wind. And we're going to animate that. Over North America. Wait a moment, let those load up just before you get into this. So, one of the things that I've found kind of interesting since returning here and just over the course of this semester has been this promise of a warm-up. And sometimes it's delivered, and sometimes when I've given a sort of a short-term forecast for over the weekend, the temperatures actually exceed what I expected. But often these warm-ups are only, as Patrick said, just a couple days long, and then we cool off again. We saw that broad ridge that extended, all the way up into the high latitudes of Western Canada, and that, looks like a promise for maybe some eventual warmth at some point if the ridge were to move, the axis were to move just a few, 10 degrees or so further to the east. But as we'll see in this animation, if this actually verifies in the sort of 16-day forecast here, but even on shorter time scales, we're kind of locked in to Eastern Canada being kind of cold and miserable. The snow they're getting there is going to help keep us. Well, actually, before we do this, let's just look at the snow cover. But then we had clouds kind of obscuring that. We saw that there's been a lot of melting. We looked at this last week, and then we'll come back to the temperature. So, snow depth. And again, some of this will probably be gone within just a couple days. This is relatively fresh snow, but a lot of it's, deeper snow covers obviously further up to the north. But there is some lingering snow cover there. How significant this is, it's not absolutely clear, but let's just look at the forecast. We'll go back to temperature and wind, and we have the forecast. So let's animate this. So a couple things to note or to watch are, looks like we're warming up. We see this pattern that kind of drifts down over the central part of the United States. This is, and also notice the cyclonic circulation there. So a couple things happening. This time of year, we have a relatively warm ground. Look at the broad, at least it starts off at cyclonic circulation. You get Ekman pumping, you get convergence, frictional convergence in the value layer. Air rises, it's relatively stable. That gives you some clouds, stratus clouds, and that can keep the temperatures down for a while. But it's just very often during this animation we get these surges of cold air from Eastern Canada sort of backing into us from the east. And it's like near the end of this, we finally begin to warm up. And then we get a surge of air from the northwest. But at least in the short term, it seems like this chilly air that's been over Eastern Canada, some of it actually heads down the Appalachians, the so-called cold air damming type of event that starts off later in the period. But it's this broad area where temperatures are below normal, or not below normal, but just colder than normal. It kind of surges over us, which is kind of an interesting aspect. And all the really warm air kind of heads off just toward north, at least early on in this pattern. So one of the things to watch is, again, the warm-up. We will warm up eventually, obviously, but short term, looks like we're going to stay relatively cool. And with that broad cyclonic circulation over us, or just to our south, we're going to probably still see a lot of clouds.
Yeah, those are really interesting, because there's a season, Dan Hottung did some work on this when he was an undergrad, for cutoffs over the Great Lakes states. It's like April 15th to June 15th, they're most prominent. And it makes you wonder if, Peter Sassunas at Michigan did all the work in the wintertime on the aggregate lake effect. I wonder about the spring. There's an aggregate lake effect that maybe you enhance any little dollop of cold air that comes across, just doesn't modify in that particular latitude, longitude sector, and leads to maybe a little bit higher prevalence of cutoffs.
Right, so the Peter Sassunas' work was more focused on the fact that the lakes were warmer, so you got a preference
Right, it's a
for
wintertime
troughs over
thing. Yeah.
over the lakes.
Yeah.
But, what you're suggesting is this likelihood of cutoffs forming, is it because of the lakes, or is there?
Well, I don't know. This one here is interesting, because at 850, there's a little cold dollop that comes
Right.
across at that longitude, and it just makes me wonder, do they hang on a little longer before they diffuse away, because the lakes are still cold in the first week of May, during this cutoff season?
Right, so that's an interesting question. So let's look at the PV on the dynamical tropopause. So this is the potential temperature on the dynamical tropopause. We'll bring that up. We'll do the theta. And we'll step through this rather than, we can keep the animation there, we'll just step through this. Maybe we can drag it to the beginning and we'll just start the advances. So this is the trough that we saw in the analysis this morning. And as we step forward, a couple things to note. Before we step forward, sorry, you can stop right there. The potential temperatures on here, to the extent that the flow is adiabatic, viscid, et cetera, should be conserved. So these winds are going to be doing a lot of the advecting around. We're not going to see these areas getting colder unless we can advect lower values of potential temperature into the trough. Okay, so this is why we have a 500 millibar trough in this region, is because we have this depressed tropopause, high PV, if you were to look at it, isotropic coordinates or even pressure coordinates at this level. So we have this trough that's formed, it's about to pinch off, okay, and it's going to be unable to spin up, get stronger once it gets cut off, simply because of the fact that you can't advect any colder air into it once it gets cut off. So let's step forward in time and look at the evolution of this. And so I'd argue that what's beneath this over time, this may actually roll up a little bit, we'll see that. Here's some of the outflow from the convection. That's occurring in the southeast here. It begins to roll up as it pinches off. And so kind of what's in here is all you got in terms of how cold it's going to get beneath this. But we have this broad cyclonic circulation, which is going to be felt through levels all the way down to the surface. If the penetration depth of the circulation is strong enough, that's going to induce or be associated with frictional convergence at low levels. And again, if it's moist enough, that air rises very weakly. It's not a very strong ascent. It's not this sort of synoptic scale forcing that you typically see, but it is forcing of a sort because of the frictional convergence. That's going to lead to clouds and stratiform. The stratiform clouds forming maybe some very light precipitation. And there are little spokes of this that are going to go by us over the next couple of days that will could lead to a little bit of enhanced precipitation. But here's that cutoff just spinning out here. What causes it to weaken? Well, the fact that we have that frictional convergence eventually leads to divergence in the middle troposphere, and that begins to spin down the vortex through the vortex tube stretching term from your vorticity equation. It'll eventually weaken, but that ascent is going to keep it chilly beneath this, at least for some time. Same time, we have another trough over the southwestern part of the United States that's also cutting off. So this is the season for cutoffs, or at least this season we're seeing a huge number of cutoffs. But to the north of this area, we see higher potential temperatures, not significantly higher, but higher, which is going to be indicative of higher heights ultimately, and a ridge beginning to form. So let's keep going through this.
I think this is how the hemisphere sheds circulation as you head to the warm season. Little dollops get isolated. They spin off. They're like drips from a bowl of water. They're dripping away, and then it's gone forever.
Great. The friction is kind of spins it down as they go further to lower latitude. This is fairly persistent as it heads out to the east. And here comes again another cutoff that's forming. I guess this, at least when they made their forecast for the 6 to 10 day period, having this feature certainly at low latitudes here, it doesn't quite match up with over Texas at this point, but we're not really 6 days out yet. Here's a big ridge, so that ultimately may portend a warming up for us once we get into later part of this week as the trough moves further to the east. Let's keep watching that as that ridge kind of nicely sort of pressed right over us.
Yeah, look at that thing.
Low potential vorticity, high geopotential heights. presumably higher thicknesses as well. This is going to be sort of the beginning of our warm-up. Doesn't look warm, like warm down here, but it is going to be certainly warm, probably 60s and 70s. That finally moves
It's a
off.
whole new regime, actually, isn't it? Yeah. No more trockiness.
Yeah. So we've lost the trockiness. We have that little, again, another cutoff forming here. Over parts of South Dakota. But again, a broad sort of ridge-like pattern that's formed north of that. If we were to look at the same animation, but now, or the same synoptic setup, but from a different viewpoint, let's look at it from, we'll go to heights, go to 500 millibars, heights and wind, and just do an animation of that over time. Maybe more familiar view. Scroll up just a little bit, please, so you can see. We can let that just animate. Yeah. There's our trough. Okay. It cuts off in geopotential height, just to our south. Nice, sort of symmetric circulation here. And again, we get little spokes of troughiness that go by, which could enhance precipitation chances. But this is, again, this cyclonic circulation, to the extent that it reaches into the boundary, but ultimately we get this big ridge that begins to form north of it. There's that small cutoff that formed in the Dakotas. They're pretty weak and a broader ridge pattern over much of the United States. So the ridge has finally shifted toward the east. And that's, that slow movement to the east may be consistent with a long wave Rossby wave type pattern. Helps us warm up just a little bit. Okay. And then let's look at the surface and precip. So here's our start 18Z. Just scroll up a little bit to see. Russ, remember we saw convection breaking out in northern parts of Georgia, and some also over parts of Texas and Mississippi. And we'll just step forward in time again. Here are the cold thicknesses over us, or approaching us with that trough. Lower thicknesses at least. Oops.
Don't like this interface.
So if we stop, let's go to Saturday afternoon. Two more clicks. So 18Z tomorrow. We still have around us, again, this broad cyclonic circulation. The upper trough interacting with that barochronicity is helping to trigger a cyclone forming here. But just looking at the curvature of the isobars, broadly, cyclonic curvature just to our south will be sort of on the edge, perhaps, of where the dominant frictional convergence is going to be occurring. But, so you might even expect on a satellite image, we might see a fairly sharp demarcation of sort of low clouds and things, and clearing maybe just to the northwest of us. Maybe perhaps on the edge. Let's keep clicking. Ahead, please. Those are going to be largely dry. And as this cutoff forms, again, light precip in the heart of it because of frictional convergence and some showers occurring. It's also somewhat unstable just beneath it, so that will trigger precipitation. But we're now still getting an easterly wind here and cyclonically curved isobars, which again, if we were to just briefly switch to 2 meter temperatures and winds like that, that'll be fine. At the same time, no, it went back. Let's see, I forget. Okay, this will work at this time. This is Monday morning. Again, you can see cross isobaric flow with that frictional convergence broadly beneath this. Lower thicknesses, obviously, beneath that upper trough. It's still chilly there. Let's go back to the surface map and precip. So most of the precip is going to be over. In fact, not much precipitation through the weekend, but we will be a little bit cool. Let's go ahead into Tuesday. Just keep, if you don't mind advancing. Again, wet on the East Coast as we get this onshore flow southeast of the cutoff, but we're under dry conditions at this point.
Tuesday is the 70th anniversary of the first numerical weather forecast made by the Joint Numerical Weather Prediction Unit. May
Is that
6,
the group at
1955. Yep. And that was the first experiment. 70 years old. Boy, that's not much time.
What year was it?
1955, May 6th.
Excellent. So that's I don't think they would imagine have seen maps like this.
I don't
It was
think
probably
so.
a barotropic model, right?
Yeah, I think it was the Ross-Buchani model, yeah,
Right.
so it was nothing like what we're doing now.
Anyone wants a copy of a barotropic model, see me, I can give it to you, you can run it on your laptop.
Probably on your iWatch or whatever they're called.
I will.
I don't know what they're called, I don't have one.
I won't advertise for that. We all know we all know what those are, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back just quickly for a couple times. We're gonna go to this afternoon. So let's go back to the 21Z. We're gonna look at 21Z for a couple days. Just one to look at soundings to kind of get a sense of the cloud cover and the depth of moisture that's over. So we can just click on that, actually, Pete. If you scroll up to 9 hours. 21Z. I just want to look at the, right, so 21Z this afternoon. So we'll go up there. And you can see kind of low and mid-level clouds over us. We're pretty saturated. There is some dry air just north of us. So obviously, you don't have to look at this to see that it's cloudy outside. You can just look out the window. But let's add 12 hours to this, or 24 hours to this, so 33 hours in the forecast. You can also drag that. 33. Right, that'll be 21. So tomorrow, again, this is, there's going to be a thin layer of low clouds perhaps over us, but maybe that'll break up somewhat. You can see the northerly or northeasterly winds aloft, northerly winds near the surface. That doesn't look too bad. But if we add another 24 to this, can I do it? 24, 57. We get, just as we begin to sort of dry out up here, looks like we get high clouds coming in. So
yeah.
We're not going to have the sunniest of weekends. And temperatures, I don't know if you noted it yesterday, upper 40s to maybe low 50s. This is on Sunday, maybe getting to the mid 50s. And we kind of stay that way until Wednesday or Thursday. We finally break into the 60s and 70s, 60s, maybe 70. So cool weather stays over us for a while. That's what I wanted to show. I'm not sure if there's anything else folks would like to look at. Don't have the European Center's 3-month daily forecast, so don't look at that. You can't do that and see, well, what will the next weather watch look like when we return to the class next in the fall. But in the fall, I hope to either have our old MM5 graphics and things of that sort up, or have a version of it with a WRF model, something I used to do way back when, sort of resurrect that and have that running. But again, thank you, Patrick, for just a wonderful set of Weather Watch discussions, really illuminating and really new and interesting things that can broaden our horizons on what we can do, both with Weather Watch and during Weather Watch, and show during Weather Watch. And thanks, Pete, for your diligence in that.
Yeah.
I missed the Weather Watch, the earlier part of the academic year. For John, you're heavily into it, and so
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to joining you again up here in the fall. But thank you all for your attendance. Have a wonderful exam week. Have fun with those exams. And that's it for today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Michael.
And also, by the way, you guys were absolutely wrong on that poll we took at the beginning. Chocolate chip with anything in the morning is just wrong. And there is a random donut up here if you want it.
They have chocolate in them?
No.
Oh.